Hello and welcome to Booksale and the As I Read for this novel, The Children of the Dead by Elfrieda Jelink. I've done the video for the first 50 pages, but before I move on to the next section of the book, there is something that I really need to interject at this point, and that's to do with the controversy that surrounds her writings. And really, those start with an earlier book called The Piano Teacher, which you may have heard of, and if you haven't heard of, you're more likely to have heard of the uh, film adaptation, which was directed by Edgar Haneke in 2001, which, because it was such a great film, Haneke's films always are, um, it was controversial because of the subject matter in there, the depiction of sadomasochistic sexuality, self-harm, and the dysfunctional relationship between a woman and her mother. Because the film was well known and well received, it got public debate about the content, and this stemmed back to the novel. Uh, this novel, a later one written in 1995. Is written in a denser, more experimental style, blending horror, abstraction, absurdism, and grotesquerie. It's more allegorical and symbolic, so that sort of limits the impact that it's had on beyond sort of literary circles, even though its content is possibly more extreme. Um, Let me read you a little bit of it um, here that we missed out from the first 50 pages, because I think it's an introduction to where the text starts to go in those kind of directions. Gudrun has come to, not realizing where she is or who she is or what's happening. So we assume a resurrection from her dead body. She's raised again, and she's wandered back um, to this lodge, this hotel, um, and found her way up to through reception and up to her room. That she sort of knows is her room, and she wanders into there. But then she hears some sounds in the corridor outside. Um, Let me read from there. Now, there is definitely some disturbance, and a pale Gudrun opens the door. There. Isn't there someone else? Also sick and out of his mind, an existential hit who took himself off the hit list. Also without luck. He couldn't be found in time to fight his last stand. Well, who'll tell you if not I? A shadowy figure, slightly bent over, stands in front of the hallway window that is embellished by a small ceramic vase, a local product, albeit with a crack from some time ago. And this figure of a young man, which must have doggedly walked itself here, also seems to be some sort of cracked pot. It does not move, stands like a statue whose walking papers have not yet been stamped. It cannot be easy to hold this position, left hand in an almost relaxed angle, propped up on the hip. A statue that unfortunately seems to have fallen ill. The man is not about to move, at least not his legs. Two rigid fleshy bars anchored in the ground are standing for Arnold Schwarzenegger, who made all the right moves as far away from here as he could. The man shows himself in a crass, glaring nakedness. His disguise, which isn't one, reveals what we have to expect and keep him as. His head seems to think nothing. The skin is light pink, as if dyed, painted on like any beauty. It does not come from a cosmetic shop. Indeed, it must come from inside. I would never have thought that this is possible, but doesn't a fly also glow in the sky and get thrown at us as a sun, only because a celestial body keeps exploding? Something controls the young man from the centre of his crotch, where his partly swollen sex has appeared through a curtain of hair, to check whether there will be an entrance applause when only bottomlessness is waiting. Down there, the thing that has surrendered has to be taken in the hand when we wish to live, wants to be drawn some power from the pump. That man, that timed-out being, quite obviously got in touch with great feelings through a nozzle when gas was still toxic, and its zeal could wipe out hundreds of filthy piles of life before they melted away by themselves. It's noisy, yet silent, that piece of sex, bobbing on this young man. A spectacle of nature and its freedom to climb up again and again on a human scaffold, as if it had just been untied from its frame. An animal that does not yet quite know what to do with its freedom. It stinks through the dust of this never-aired hallway, and its gorgeous nature is in full view on the floor, for as he was dying the young man soiled himself. So now small piles are covering the planks laid in a track to the staircase, a shitty runner installed by this figure under the influence, or elevated by, the weightlessness of the gas. The thing here is that it's talking about this young man's sexuality frozen in this statue, and equating his penis to the pipe that's bringing in the gas to the gas chambers in the Holocaust. This is really strong stuff. This is hard to take. It must have been very toxic gas. What else could have caused such vermilion skin? Something evil whizzed out of the spigot. The sex's veins are all swollen from anger, and what had accumulated inside had begun to move. Blood. It started to slide, a badly moored load, and then the lifeboat tilted in the waves, and the precious cargo slipped back again, a few crystal-clear drops still speaking over the sex's rim, gradually drying up, leaving behind an unnatural glow, festiveness, the gift of the gab, a splashy performer who at the very last moment could not complete his act. This dichotomy before the sperm that would create life and the gas that took it away. It's just, I'm going to miss a bit now and move on to a later bit where Gudrun's looking at his penis. Here we go. Gudrun backs away from this organ peeled out of infinity so impetuously, offering nature pure as a sign that this is a good thing, like organic food or all natural cosmetics or simply a stroll together, yet still alone you've got it. This is how you see the face of God. Dead on, I mean. It is to die for. Those blots on the floor and those crimson thighs. The heat rising from this man's sex terrifies Gudrun in her unfeelingness. It is as if stones were hitting her, that clumsy rock climber of thinking who did not even hang on to any thought as a memento of herself. When the opportunity arises, we can also become quite massive. That is, when we take over another person's sleep. Gudrun intervenes in this death by approaching the pole that pins this man's body down for good. She wants to pierce her heart with it, hoping that it will finally bring about the vampire's death, and at the same time extract her from herself, from all that half-chewed and spit-out knowledge, which is of no use to anyone but still seems to give her a kind of life. Yet in our country, the great ideas are taken from the dead, never from the living. They are taken from Kant, Hegel, Schopenhauer, and Joseph M. Hauer. The injuries of the dead young man, the poison under his skin, are red hot. His body is ice cold. The sex is his antlers, with which he tries to decorate his wall. A timid try. The mortally wounded skin glows. It seems to contract around the stake of flesh, offer it with appealing audacity, a plant wrapped in skin, a bouquet that is a last attempt to pull itself up by the rope ladder of blood out of the soil's hair roots. the only trump this body can play to possibly birth himself again from this lethargic dream of death. Many have been sent into the gas, but maybe this young man, of all people, who took his own care of his own fate, was one nickel too many in Uncle Dagobert's silo. Amazing how interesting and multi-layered such a piece of sex really is. You can peel it like a fruit. It has a solid, hard core, and all this is supposed to be sunk in the morass of time. Some are more adept at looking than Gudrun. Others have practiced eating and drinking at haute école of the dressage of ovens. Oh yes, the average person always demands the extraordinary. And there we are. I mean, that's extraordinary writing, and really powerful, and no punches held there in that. Now, I want to recommend a podcast which you can find on the site called Paraphrasis, which is an interview with the translator Gita Honegger, and it's well worth listening to. I'll put a link to it. I think I've found out how to do that kind of thing now. But there we are. That's my little interjection at this point about the Children of the Dead and Elfrieda Jelinek's novel. So it's at that. It's goodbye from Booksalve. I keep forgetting the name of the channel. It's ridiculous. Goodbye from Booksalve, and happy reading to you all. Cheerio.